Hello, and welcome to Gloomy Realm. Before we begin, take a moment to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I always enjoy reading them. If you enjoy slow, unsettling stories that lead you beyond the familiar and into the forgotten corners of the night, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now, get comfortable, let your body relax, and allow the sounds of the outside world to slowly disappear. Tonight, the boundary between light and shadow begins to fade, and beyond it, a forgotten world awaits. So close your eyes, listen carefully, and let yourself wander into the gloomy realm. Story 1, I should not still remember that day so clearly. I was only 9 years old, and most memories from that age have softened with time. Faces blur. Voices fade. Places shrink in the mind until they feel more like dreams than real life. But that day has never faded. It has stayed sharp, almost too sharp, like a piece of glass under the skin. The older I get, the more I understand that the memory itself may be part of what went wrong. Some places do not only trap people, some places remember them back. My father and I lived in a mountain village then. It was small, quiet, and far enough from the county town that going there felt like a small journey. The county town was where people went for medicine, tools, school supplies, papers, and anything our village shops did not carry. Most families went by motorbike if they had one. Some took the bus when it came. My father and I went by bicycle because he said it was good exercise, and because, at 9 years old, I still thought riding beside him made me part of something important. That morning was supposed to be normal. I remember the air being cool when we left the village, with thin mist still caught around the slopes. My father checked both tires before we started, then told me to stay close and not race ahead. He wore his old dark jacket and carried a small cloth bag tied to the back of his bicycle. I do not remember what we needed from town. It might have been medicine for my mother, or new tools, or maybe papers from the office. The reason has been lost. The road has not. The main road wound down from the village between low hills and patches of forest. I had ridden it before with my father. There were turns I knew, stones I recognized, and places where the road dipped so sharply that my stomach lifted when I went fast. For the first half of the trip, nothing was strange. My father rode ahead, and I followed behind him, copying the way he leaned into turns. I remember the sound of our tires on the road, the clicking of the bicycle chains, and my father telling me to slow down whenever I got too confident. Then we reached the blocked road. Construction barriers stood across the way. Red and white boards had been placed in a crooked line, and a faded sign warned people not to pass. There were piles of gravel, broken stones, and a machine parked farther down the road, though no workers were there that morning. My father stopped and looked at the blocked road for a long time. I waited behind him with one foot on the ground, already expecting him to say we would go home. Instead, he looked toward the left side of the road. There was a smaller path there, almost hidden behind grass and leaning bamboo. I had seen it before, but only in the way children see forbidden things. I knew it existed. I also knew people did not use it. No one in our village ever explained the reason clearly. Adults were like that. They would tell children not to do something, then refuse to say why, as if silence made the warning stronger. About that path, people only said one thing: never ride through it twice. I had heard that line more than once. Old men said it while smoking outside the shop. Women said it when children rode too close to the entrance. My grandmother once pulled me away from it so hard my wrist hurt, then told me never to ask about it again. But no one said what would happen if someone did ride through it twice. Maybe that was why it never felt real to me. A warning without an explanation becomes a dare to a child. My father knew the warning too. I saw it in the way he paused. He looked at the blocked road, then at the bamboo path, then back at me. For a moment, I thought he would turn around. Then he sighed and said we would take the shortcut just this once. "Stay close," he told me. I nodded, and we entered the bamboo forest. At first, nothing seemed wrong. The path was narrow, but clear enough for bicycles. Bamboo grew on both sides, tall and close together, its green stalks rising straight up like walls. The leaves made a roof above us, letting in thin strips of sunlight. It should have been beautiful. Maybe it was for the first few minutes. I remember trying to look brave, because I could tell my father did not like the place. Then the sound disappeared. It did not fade slowly. It did not become quiet in a natural way. It vanished all at once. 1 second, I could hear the tires, the chain, the faint wind through the bamboo leaves, and the small sounds of insects. The next second, all of it was gone. There was no wind, no birds, no tire noise, no chain clicking. Even my own breathing seemed far away, like it was happening underwater. I opened my mouth to ask my father if he noticed, but my voice felt trapped in my throat. The path grew narrower. The bamboo pressed in closer. I could not see more than a few yards ahead, because the stalks bent and crossed in strange ways, blocking the view. My father rode in front of me, his dark jacket easy to follow. I kept my eyes on his back and tried not to look too long into the spaces between the bamboo. After a while, he turned right into a side path. I saw it clearly. He leaned his bicycle, turned the front wheel, and disappeared between two thick clusters of bamboo. I pedaled faster to follow him, but when I reached the place where he had turned, there was no side path. There was no fork at all. The path went straight ahead. Bamboo grew tightly on both sides, with no opening wide enough for a person, much less a bicycle. I stopped so suddenly that my foot slipped off the pedal. I stared at the place where I had seen him turn. There was only bamboo, straight, green, still bamboo. That was the first wrong thing. I called for him. "Dad?" My voice sounded small and flat. It did not carry. The forest seemed to swallow it before it left my mouth. I called again, louder this time, but there was no answer. Then I saw him ahead of me. He was on the path, maybe 30 yards away, riding at an easy speed. Same dark jacket, same bicycle, same straight-backed posture. Relief rushed through me so quickly that I almost laughed. I got back on my bicycle and pedaled after him. But I could not reach him. No matter how fast I rode, the distance between us stayed the same. If I pushed harder, he moved faster. If I slowed down because my legs began to burn, he slowed too. The space between us did not stretch or shrink. It remained fixed, as if someone had measured it with a rope. That was the second wrong thing. I started to feel scared then, not the simple fear of being lost, but something deeper. The kind of fear that tells your body it has entered a place where the normal rules no longer apply. I wanted to stop. I wanted to turn around. But the thought of being alone on that path was worse than following him, so I kept riding. The bamboo around us seemed endless. The path should not have been that long. I knew the shortcut could not stretch for miles because the county town was not that far, but time felt strange there. My legs ached. My hands hurt from gripping the handlebars. My mouth was dry. Still, the rider ahead of me stayed at the same distance. Then, without warning, I was beside him. I do not remember catching up. One moment, he was ahead of me. The next, we were riding side by side. I turned my head to speak to my father, and the words died inside me. His body was right. His jacket was right. His hands on the handlebars were right. Even the way his shoulders leaned forward was exactly like my father. But his face was wrong. It was swollen and pale, puffed out like something left too long in dirty water. The skin looked stretched in some places and loose in others. His cheeks sagged. His lips were thick and dark. His eyes were not my father's eyes. They were dull, clouded, and too still. His whole face looked as if someone had tried to rebuild my father from a memory, but the memory had been damaged. Like a drowned man had been pulled apart and put back together by something that did not fully understand people. I could not breathe. The thing did not look at me, it did not speak, it did not react at all. It simply kept riding forward, its swollen face turned toward the path, its wet-looking hands steady on the handlebars. Then it moved ahead of me and disappeared into the bamboo. No turn, no sound, no movement of leaves. It was simply gone. I stopped my bicycle, shaking so hard I nearly fell. Then I heard my father behind me. This time, his voice sounded real. He was calling my name, angry and afraid. I turned and saw him riding toward me from behind, his face normal, his jacket dusty, his eyes wide with panic. He grabbed my shoulder when he reached me. "Where were you?" he demanded. "I have been calling you." I started crying. I told him he had turned into a side path. I told him there had been no side path when I got there. I told him I had followed him, and then I had seen him ahead of me, and then I had ridden beside him. My father did not speak. The longer I talked, the more his face changed. Not because he did not believe me, but because something in what I said frightened him. He looked past me down the empty path, then back the way he had come. Finally, he said very quietly, there was no second rider. I asked what he meant. He said he had never turned off the path. He said I had been behind him, and then suddenly I was gone. He had stopped and called for me. He had searched the path. He had walked his bicycle back and forth, shouting my name. He said I had been missing for nearly 20 minutes. I wanted to argue, but I could not. I had no way to explain what happened. I only knew that I had seen him, or something wearing enough of him to fool me from behind. We left the bamboo forest without speaking. My father told me to ride in front of him, and I did. I could feel his eyes on my back the whole way. I did not look into the bamboo. I did not look back. I was afraid that if I did, I would see the other rider again, keeping the same distance, never coming closer and never falling behind. Eventually, the bamboo opened and sound returned all at once. The wind rushed back. Birds called from somewhere above us. My bicycle chain clicked. My father's breathing became loud behind me. The sudden noise made me flinch. It was like coming up from deep water. Ahead of us was the river crossing. It was the place where people passed before reaching the county town. The river was not very wide, but it moved steadily over stones, with a narrow bridge and a shallow bank beside it. I had crossed it before and never been afraid of it. That day, I saw a man standing in the water. He was near the middle of the river, half submerged. The water reached his waist or maybe his chest. He wore a gray work uniform. His arms hung at his sides. His head was tilted slightly forward. He did not move with the current. He did not turn when we came closer. Water pushed around him, but his body stayed still, like a post driven into the riverbed. I stopped my bicycle. My father asked what was wrong. I pointed at the river. "There's a man." My father looked. For a few seconds, he said nothing. His face was blank. Then he took my wrist and pulled me forward. "There is no one there," he said. I looked again. The man was still there. He stood in the water with his gray uniform clinging to him, his face turned toward us. I could not see his eyes clearly, but I knew he was watching. That was when I understood something, even though I was too young to put it into words. The forest was not just showing strange things. It was choosing who could see them. My father crossed the river quickly, almost dragging me beside him. I kept looking back until the trees blocked the view. The man in the water never moved. We went to town, but I do not remember what we did there. I do not remember the ride home either. I only remember my father making us take a longer road back, even though it added hours to the trip. We did not go through the bamboo forest again. That night, I became sick. My fever rose so high that my dreams turned into broken shapes. I remember my mother pressing a wet cloth to my forehead. I remember my father standing in the doorway, whispering to her. I remember waking and sleeping and waking again, never sure which room I was in. Sometime in the night, I heard my parents arguing. They thought I was asleep. My mother was angry. Her voice shook as she asked my father why he had taken that path. My father kept saying the main road was blocked and that he had no choice. My mother said there was always a choice. Then she said something that made my fevered mind go still. A forest worker had drowned in that river months earlier. He had been part of a repair crew working near the crossing after heavy rain. He slipped or fell or was pulled in. People searched for him. His body was found later downstream. But my mother said the report had been incomplete. That was the word she used. Incomplete. Not all of him had been recovered. I did not understand what that meant then. I only knew I had seen a man in a gray uniform standing in the river, and my father had not. Years passed before I began to understand. Even now, I do not think I understand fully. I only have pieces. The bamboo path. The silent forest. The rider with my father's body and a drowned man's face. The worker in the river. The rule no one explained. Never ride through it twice. When I was older, I returned to the village. My father had died by then, and my mother had moved away to live with my sister. The village was smaller than I remembered. Childhood places always are. The road to the county town had been repaired long ago. The bamboo path was still there, though it looked narrower, darker, and less real than the roads around it. I did not enter it. I asked people about the drowned worker. Most did not want to talk. A few remembered him. One person told me there was an old photograph of the repair crew in the village office, taken before the accident. I went there the next day. The photograph hung on a wall near a dusty cabinet. It showed several workers standing beside the river, all wearing gray uniforms. I found the drowned man right away, or I thought I did. For less than a second, his face changed. It did not move like a living face. It shifted like a bad picture trying to correct itself. The eyes became someone else's eyes. The mouth widened, then narrowed. The cheeks seemed to swell and sink at the same time. It was trying to become another person, or maybe several people at once. Then it settled back into the face of the worker. I stepped away so fast the clerk asked if I was all right. That was when I realized I had never only been a witness. The forest had seen me too. It had recorded me in some way. It had taken my fear, my memory, my father's shape, the drowned worker's broken body, and it had kept them. Maybe that is what it does. Maybe it does not make ghosts. Maybe it copies what is missing. It keeps unfinished versions of the dead, and maybe of the living too. Before I left the village, I went to speak to an old Taoist who lived near the Temple Road. People said he knew things, though no one agreed on what kind of things. I asked him about the bamboo forest. I expected him to talk about curses, spirits, or angry dead men. He did not. He listened without interrupting. Then he said only one sentence. The path does not repeat people. People repeat the path. I asked him what that meant, but he would not explain. I do not enter bamboo forests anymore. It is not only fear. Fear would be easier. Fear fades if you stay away from what caused it. This is different. I stay away because I know what happens when that place notices someone twice. I know it does not forget. I know it can carry a shape forward for years, maybe forever. The worst part is that the haunting did not stay in the village. Even far from home, on quiet roads, I sometimes see a cyclist ahead of me, always at the same distance, always moving at the same speed. If I slow down, he slows down. If I speed up, he speeds up. He never turns back. He never calls out. He just rides ahead of me, waiting for the distance between us to stop meaning anything. I used to wonder if it was my father. Then I wondered if it was the drowned worker. Now I am afraid it might be me. So I do not try to catch up anymore. I keep my distance. I turn away when I can, because I am no longer sure which side of the path I am on. And I am afraid that if I ever reach him again, the face I see will be my own. Story 2. Growing up, I always had strange dreams. Not the kind you forget the second you wake up, but the kind that stay with you for years. Some of them were so clear and detailed that they felt more like memories than dreams. I had dreams that came back again and again, almost like episodes of a horrible TV show, where something bad was always happening to me or my family. I had dreams where I knew I was dreaming, and tried to escape from something I could not see, something angry and invisible that wanted to hurt me. But the worst dreams were the sleep paralysis nightmares. Those happened a few times every month. I never knew when they were going to come. I could have a normal day, eat dinner with my parents, watch TV, laugh at something stupid, and go to bed feeling fine. Then the nightmare would find me anyway. It always started the same way. I would go upstairs to my room, call goodnight to my parents from the hallway, shut my bedroom door, and get into bed. My room looked ordinary and safe. I had glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to the ceiling from when I was little. At night, they gave off a soft green light that made the room feel less dark. My vanity mirror stood across from my bed, facing me directly. I never liked that mirror much, but my mom said it made the room look bigger, so it stayed there. I would pull the blanket up, close my eyes, and slowly drift into sleep. Then, all at once, I would be awake again. At least, it felt like I was awake. I would open my eyes and see my room exactly as it had been before. The lights would be off. The stars would glow faintly on the ceiling. The walls, the dresser, the closet door, and the mirror would all be in their usual places. Nothing would seem wrong at first. The house would be completely quiet. The kind of quiet that comes in the middle of the night when everyone else is asleep. Then I would try to move. That was when I understood. My body would be stuck to the bed. My arms would not lift. My legs would not move. My fingers would not even twitch. It felt like someone had poured heavy cement into my bones. My neck would be frozen too, forcing me to stare straight ahead at the vanity mirror. That was how I always saw her. She would be standing beside my headboard, but I would only see her through the mirror at first. She was tall and thin, so thin that she almost looked stretched. Her body was bent in a strange way, like her bones did not fit together properly. She would stand close to me, just beside my pillow, staring at my reflection. The first few seconds were always the worst, because my mind would try to deny it. I would tell myself it was a shadow. I would tell myself it was a jacket hanging on a chair, or a trick of the mirror, or some strange part of the dream. But deep down, I knew. It was her. It was always her. Panic would rush through me, but I could not scream. I could feel the scream building in my throat, burning there, trapped behind my teeth. I would try to call for my mom. I would try to call for my dad. I would try to make any sound at all. But nothing came out. She would stare at me through the mirror for a few moments. Then she would slowly turn her head. Not her body, just her head. She would stop looking at my reflection and look directly down at my frozen body. Her face was pale and thin. Her skin looked almost gray in the dark, stretched tight over sharp bones. Her mouth was usually closed, straight and flat, with no expression at all. But her eyes were the worst part. They were completely black, not dark brown, not shadowed. Black, empty, bottomless, they looked like holes cut into her face, and somehow those holes were full of hate. After staring down at me, she would take one slow step forward, then another. Her movements were careful and steady, like she had all the time in the world. She never rushed. She never had to. She knew I could not move. She knew I could not fight. She would turn her whole body toward me and reach out with her long, thin arms. Her fingers were bony and too long, with nails that looked dark in the faint light. The first thing she always touched was my chest. Her hand would press down. At first, it was just pressure. Then, it became pain. She would push harder and swing one skeletal leg over my waist. Then, she would lift the second leg onto the bed and climb on top of me. She would straddle me with her arms locked straight, holding herself up just enough to keep her face above mine. And then, she would stare. She would look directly into my eyes with no expression on her face. I would try to breathe, but her weight would press into my chest like a heavy stone. She was so thin that she should not have weighed much, but she felt impossibly heavy. It felt like the air was being squeezed out of my lungs little by little. I would choke silently, trying to beg her to stop, trying to force my mouth to move, trying to make any sound that might wake my parents. Nothing worked. I could only lie there and stare back at her. Sometimes I thought she enjoyed it. Not in the way a normal person enjoys something. She never smiled. She never laughed. But there was something in the way she watched me, something patient and cruel. She looked at me like I was a fly caught in a web, something small and helpless that belonged to her. Those moments felt endless. Maybe she stayed on my chest for 1 minute, maybe less. But inside the dream, it felt like I was trapped under her for hours. Then, when I was sure I was going to suffocate, she would slowly climb off me. She would stand beside the bed again. For a few seconds, she would look into the mirror. I would still be forced to stare at it, so I would see her reflection standing behind me. Then, she would turn toward my bedroom door. Her bare feet would drag across the floor. The sound was soft but horrible, a slow scrape against the wood. Step, drag, step, drag. My eyes would follow her in the mirror until she moved out of its view. Then, somehow, my frozen neck would loosen just enough for me to see her reach the door. She would lift one hand and wrap her long fingers around the doorknob. Her nails would scrape against the wood around it, Then the knob would turn. Slowly, the hinges would creak as the door opened. She would slip out into the hallway, moving like a shadow with bones, and disappear. Then, the dream would end. I would wake up in my bed, covered in sweat, my eyes burning with tears. My chest would ache like someone had been sitting on it for real. Sometimes it felt bruised for the rest of the morning. I would lie there shaking, staring at the ceiling, waiting for my breathing to return to normal. But every time, I noticed the same thing. My bedroom door would be open. I always closed it before going to bed. Always I hated sleeping with it open. But after those nightmares, it would be wide open, facing the dark hallway. And then I would hear my dad. Down the hall, from my parents' room, there would be muffled, strained groans. Not loud enough to wake the whole house, but loud enough for me to hear in the silence. They sounded like someone trying to breathe through pain, like someone trying not to scream. The sounds would last for 2 or 3 minutes, then they would stop. A few seconds later, my dad would come rushing down the hallway. He would burst into my room, pale and sweating, his eyes wide with fear. He always looked full of adrenaline, like he had just fought his way out of a nightmare too. "Are you all right?" he would ask, his voice shaking. "Did she visit you too?" At first, when I was very young, I didn't understand what he meant. I thought he was asking about my nightmare because he had heard me crying. But as I got older, I realized he knew about her. He had seen her too. He never explained much, not really. Whenever I asked, he would go quiet or tell me we would talk about it later. Later never came. My mom would tell him not to scare me. She would say sleep paralysis could feel very real, that the mind could create awful things when the body was caught between sleep and waking. But my dad never looked convinced. On the nights she came, he would lie beside me in my bed until I fell asleep again. He would keep one arm around me and stare at the open doorway like he expected her to come back. Those dreams followed us for years. Then, last summer, I finally moved out of my childhood home. My job took me from the quiet suburbs to a busy city near the ocean. At first, the noise drove me crazy. Cars passed under my apartment windows all night. People shouted on the sidewalk at 2 a.m. Sirens cried somewhere in the distance almost every hour. The building pipes knocked. The elevator hummed. The city never truly slept. But after a while, I began to love it. The noise made me feel safe. There was always life around me, always movement, always someone nearby. Best of all, I was far away from my old bedroom, far away from the vanity mirror, far away from the bed that had never felt like it belonged only to me. And for the first time in my life, the sleep paralysis stopped. I still dreamed, but the dreams became normal. Boring, even, I dreamed about work. I dreamed about being late to meetings. I dreamed about movies I had fallen asleep watching. Sometimes I dreamed about forgetting to reply to emails or losing my keys. They were annoying dreams, but they were mine. She was gone. For months, I did not see her once. I started to believe I had left her behind. Then last night happened. It began like any normal night. I turned off the lights in my apartment and walked to my bedroom. The city glowed through the curtains, bright signs and passing headlights making soft patterns on the walls. Somewhere outside, a car horn sounded. Someone laughed on the street below. My apartment felt small, warm, and ordinary. Before getting into bed, I texted my parents goodnight. It was something I had started doing after moving out, partly because I knew my dad worried, and partly because I still missed the feeling of saying goodnight from the hallway. My mom replied first with a heart. My dad replied a minute later, telling me to sleep well. I closed my bedroom door, got into bed, and turned on a documentary about a horrible crime that had happened years ago. I don't even remember the details now. A missing person, a small town, a family with secrets. The narrator's voice was low and steady, and I felt myself getting sleepy. At some point, I drifted off. Then, suddenly, I was awake again. My eyes opened. The TV was off. That alone made me uneasy, because I always set a sleep timer, and it usually stayed on longer than that. The room was dark, except for a thin line of city light around the curtains. But the worst part was the silence. The city outside was completely still. No cars, no voices, no sirens, no elevator, no pipes, no hum from the street. It was as if someone had placed a glass bowl over the entire world and trapped me inside it. I tried to move. I couldn't. My body was frozen to the bed. The old fear rushed back so hard that I almost felt like a child again. My arms were useless. My legs were heavy. My throat locked tight around a scream that would not come. I stared into the darkness, praying I was wrong, praying this was only a memory of the old nightmares. Then, my bedroom doorknob slowly turned. I watched it move inch by inch. The door opened with a long, dull creak. And there she was. She stood in the doorway like a shadow that had learned how to stand on two legs. Her body was still long and thin, but somehow she looked worse than I remembered. Taller, sharper, more real. Her pale face floated in the dark above her narrow shoulders, and her black eyes were fixed on me. She stepped into my room. Her bare feet dragged across the floor. The sound was like nails scraping a chalkboard, soft but sharp enough to make my skin crawl. Step, drag, step, drag. I tried to scream. I tried to move. I tried to do anything. Nothing happened. She came closer, but this time she did not go to the side of my bed. She walked to the foot of it and stopped there. For several seconds, she only stared at me. Then something changed. Her head tilted slowly to one side. And she smiled. She had never smiled before. The sight of it filled me with a kind of fear I had never felt, even as a child. Her mouth stretched open too wide, showing teeth that were sharp as knives and unnaturally white. They looked too clean, too bright, almost glowing in the darkness. She leaned forward slightly. When she spoke, her voice was gentle. That made it worse. "There's my girl," she whispered. I woke up screaming. I was sitting upright in bed, soaked in sweat, crying so hard I could barely breathe. My hands shook as I grabbed the blanket and kicked it away from me. The woman was gone. My room was dark. The city outside was loud again. Cars moved below my window. Someone shouted in the street. A siren wailed far away. For a few seconds, I almost convinced myself it had only been a nightmare. Then I saw my bedroom door. It was open. I stared at it until my eyes burned. Then my phone buzzed on the nightstand. My hands were shaking so badly that I nearly dropped it when I picked it up. The screen showed the time, and then my eyes moved to the message I had received 4 minutes earlier. It was from my dad. I saw her too. Story 3. I was driving back from a village last month after finishing work for the day. My job is not exciting, and it is not the kind of job people usually want to hear about. I collect old dues for a finance company. Most of the time, that means I spend my days going from one village to another, meeting people who do not want to see me, asking for money they either cannot pay or do not want to pay. It is tiring work. It takes me through small places that do not even show properly on maps, through broken roads, empty fields, and forests where the trees grow so close together that the sky looks like a thin strip above your head. That evening, I had stayed longer than I planned. One of the men I had gone to meet kept asking for more time. He made tea, called his brother, brought out old papers, and kept saying he would pay soon. I had heard that same promise too many times, but I still had to sit there and listen. By the time I finally left the village, it was already close to 7 p.m. The road back was almost empty. At first, that did not seem strange. Some village roads become quiet after sunset. People go inside. Shops close early. Farmers return home. But this silence felt different. There were no motorcycles, no tractors, no trucks carrying crops, not even a bicycle. I did not see a single person walking along the side of the road. Even the birds were silent. That was what made me uneasy. Usually, in places like that, you hear something. Insects, birds, dogs barking somewhere far away. But that evening, there was nothing. It felt like the whole forest was holding its breath. The road cut through a thick, green stretch of trees. On both sides, the forest pressed close, dark and wet looking even before the rain came. I had driven through that area before, but never this late, and never alone. The trees seemed taller than I remembered. Their branches reached over the road like bent fingers. Every few seconds, I looked in the rearview mirror, even though there was no one behind me. The sky was still a little light when I left the village, but dark clouds started moving in fast. At first, they were only a gray line in the distance. Then, within 10 minutes, they covered everything. The last light of evening disappeared as if someone had thrown a black cloth over the sky. I turned on my headlights. The road ahead looked narrow and pale under the beams. The trees on both sides became moving shadows. Then, the lightning started. The first flash lit up the whole forest. For 1 second, every tree, every branch, every leaf became bright white. Then, the darkness came back even deeper than before. A moment later, thunder cracked so loudly that I felt it in my chest. It was not the normal sound of thunder rolling far away. It sounded close. Too close. Like the sky had split open right above my car. Then the rain came. It hit my windshield so hard that I almost slowed to a stop. The wipers moved as fast as they could, but they were useless. Water covered the glass in sheets. The road turned blurry. My headlights reflected off the rain and made it even harder to see. I leaned forward over the steering wheel, gripping it with both hands, trying to keep the car steady. The wind grew worse. It pushed against the car from the side, making it shake. I saw trees bending in ways they should not have bent. Their trunks leaned hard, and their branches whipped back and forth like they were trying to tear themselves free. Leaves flew across the road. Small branches hit the hood and roof with sharp cracks. I told myself to stay calm. I had driven in storms before. I just needed to keep moving slowly until I reached the main road. Once I got there, I would find traffic, lights, shops, people. Anything was better than being alone on that road. Then it happened. A huge peepal tree stood ahead, close to the left side of the road. I saw it only because lightning flashed behind it. The tree was old and wide, with a thick trunk and long roots that twisted near the ground. For half a second, it looked like a black giant standing in the rain. Then, with a sound like a gunshot, the trunk cracked. The tree snapped. It came down right in front of my car. The sound was unbelievable. It hit the road with a crash so loud it felt like a bomb had gone off. I slammed my foot on the brake. The car skidded on the wet road. For one terrifying second, I thought I was going to crash straight into the fallen trunk. The steering wheel pulled in my hands, the tires screamed, and the whole car slid sideways. It stopped inches from the tree. I sat there for a moment, breathing hard, my heart pounding so fast it hurt. Rain hammered on the roof. The windshield wipers kept moving back and forth, squeaking against the glass. After a while, I forced myself to open the door and step outside. Cold rain hit me immediately. In seconds, my shirt was soaked. I walked to the front of the car and looked at the tree. It was worse than I thought. The whole road was blocked. The trunk lay across both lanes, and the branches spread out like a wall. There was no way to drive over it. There was no space to pass around it either. The forest was too thick on both sides, and the ground beyond the road was muddy and uneven. I was trapped. I got back into the car, shivering, and decided to turn around. Maybe I could go back to the village and find another road. It would take longer, but at least I would not be stuck in the forest. I turned the key. Nothing happened. No engine sound, no clicking, no dashboard lights, nothing. I tried again. Still nothing. For a few seconds, I just stared at the steering wheel. Then I checked the headlights. Dead. The interior light. Dead, everything was dead, as if the car had never had a battery in it at all. That was when fear truly settled in. I pulled out my phone. No signal. 0 bars. I moved it around, held it near the window, raised it above my head like an idiot. Nothing changed. The storm kept raging outside, and I sat there in the dark car on an empty road with a fallen tree in front of me and no way to call anyone. I do not know how long I sat there. Maybe 2 minutes. Maybe 10. Time felt strange in that storm. The rain was so loud it filled my head. I kept looking through the windshield at the fallen tree, then at the dark forest around me. Every shadow seemed to move. Then I saw the light. At first I thought it was lightning reflecting on the rain, but it did not vanish. It stayed there, steady and yellow, deep inside the forest on the right side of the road. It was not bright, but in that darkness, it stood out clearly. A light meant a house. A house meant people. People meant help. Or at least a roof over my head until morning. I stared at it for a long time, trying to decide what to do. Leaving the car felt stupid. Walking into the forest during a storm felt even worse. But staying inside the dead car all night also felt impossible. The rain was getting heavier, the road was blocked, and my phone was useless. So I grabbed my phone to use as a torch, though the battery was low, and stepped out. The rain struck me again, cold and hard. I locked the car out of habit, even though I knew there was no one around to steal it, then started walking toward the light. There was no proper path. I pushed through wet bushes and stepped over roots. The ground had turned into thick mud. My shoes sank with every step. Twice, I slipped and almost fell. Once, my hand landed against a tree trunk, and the bark felt strangely cold, almost like stone. The yellow light stayed ahead of me, never moving, always just far enough to make me keep going. The forest was darker than it should have been. Even with my phone torch, I could barely see more than a few feet ahead. The trees seemed packed together, their branches hanging low. The rain ran down my face and into my eyes. My breath came fast, partly from walking and partly from fear. After what felt like a long time, I reached a small clearing. In the middle of it stood a cottage. It was old-fashioned, the kind of place you do not expect to see hidden in a forest. The walls were white, though stained with age and rain. The roof was tiled, with some tiles broken or missing. Yellow light glowed from 2 windows. Smoke did not come from the chimney, but the house still looked lived in. That should have made me feel better. It did not. There was something wrong with the silence around it. I was close enough now to see the light clearly, but I heard no voices. No TV. No radio. No sound of dishes or footsteps or anything normal. Just the storm behind me and the rain falling through the trees. I walked to the small gate. Before I touched it, it creaked open by itself. I froze. For a moment, I almost turned and ran back to the car. But the rain was pouring, my car was dead, and the forest behind me looked darker than the house ahead. I swallowed hard and called out, "Is anyone there?" My voice sounded small and weak in the storm. For a few seconds, there was no answer. Then a woman's voice came from inside the cottage. "Yes," she said softly, "I am here." I could not see her, but her voice was calm. Too calm. "My car broke down," I called. "The road is blocked. Can I stay here for the night? Or use your phone?" There was a pause. Then she said, "Come in." The front door was not locked. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The air changed immediately. Outside, the air was wet and wild. Inside, it was cold and still. The cottage smelled like damp earth, old wood, and something sweet. Jasmine, maybe. The smell was strong, like someone had filled the rooms with flowers, but I did not see any. I stood near the doorway, dripping water onto the floor. The room was dim. A lamp burned on a small wooden table, giving off the yellow light I had seen from the forest. There was old furniture, a woven chair, a low table, shelves with brass plates, and a dark hallway at the back of the room. "Hello?" I said. From the hallway, she appeared. She was young, maybe 25. Beautiful in a quiet, almost unreal way. She wore a simple white saree that moved softly as she walked. Her hair was long and black, hanging over her shoulders and down her back. It looked wet, as if she had also been outside in the rain, but there were no drops on the floor beneath her feet. Her face was pale and smooth. Her eyes were dark. She looked at me without blinking. "You are wet," she said. I tried to smile, but my mouth felt dry. "Yes, the storm is bad. A tree fell on the road." My car stopped working. She came closer. With each step, the room seemed to grow colder. I noticed then that her feet made no sound on the floor. I wanted to step back, but the door was behind me. I told myself not to be foolish. Maybe she was just a quiet person. Maybe the storm and the dark had made my mind play tricks. Then her face changed. It happened slowly at first, then all at once. The smooth skin on her cheeks turned gray, like ash. Her dark eyes spread until the white parts disappeared completely. Her lips pulled back into a smile that was too wide for a human face. I saw her teeth, sharp and uneven, pressing together like broken glass. I tried to scream, but the sound stuck in my throat. Behind me, the door slammed shut so hard the walls shook. I grabbed the handle and pulled, but it would not move. It felt as if someone on the other side was holding it closed. I turned back toward her. Her fingers were changing too. They stretched longer and thinner, the nails turning dark and sharp. Her head tilted slightly, as if she was studying me. The sweet jasmine smell became stronger, but now there was something rotten underneath it. I tried to run. My body would not move. My legs were locked. My arms felt heavy. Even my breathing became difficult, like the air had thickened around me. The woman stepped closer. Her hair began to move. At first, I thought it was the wind from somewhere in the house, but there was no wind. The black strands lifted from her shoulders and floated in the air. They twisted and curled like living things. Then they began to grow. The hair slid across the floor toward me. I watched it come, unable to move, unable to scream. It spread over the wooden boards like black water. Then it shot forward. It wrapped around my ankles first. The touch was cold, so cold that it burned. I gasped as the strands tightened. More hair wrapped around my wrists, my arms, my chest. Then it climbed my neck. I tried to pull free, but the hair held me like rope. It tightened around my throat. I could not breathe. I could not even make a sound. My phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor, its torchlight spinning across the room before going dark. The woman came close enough for me to see my own terrified face reflected in her black eyes. Her smile widened. Her hair pulled me forward until my face was only an inch from hers. Her skin smelled like wet soil and old flowers. Her mouth opened, and she whispered something I could not understand. The words were soft, but they seemed to crawl inside my ears and settle behind my eyes. Then, everything went black. When I woke up, the sun was shining. For a while, I did not understand where I was. I was lying on the side of the road, half in the dirt and half on the grass. My clothes were dry, though I clearly remembered being soaked. My head hurt badly. My throat felt raw, as if someone had pressed a hand around it all night. I sat up too fast and almost threw up. The storm was gone. The sky was clear and bright. Birds were singing in the trees. The road looked normal. My car was parked a few feet away, not where I had left it near the fallen tree, but neatly on the side of the road. The doors were locked. There was no mud on the tires. No leaves stuck to the windshield. It looked like it had never been through a storm at all. I stood on shaky legs and looked down the road. The peepal tree was gone. Not moved. Not cut. Gone, there were no broken branches, no torn roots, no marks on the road. The place where it had fallen was clear. The road was empty from one end to the other. I told myself I must have dreamed it. Maybe I had been tired. Maybe I had stopped the car and fallen asleep. Maybe the storm had never been as bad as I thought. But that did not explain why I had woken up outside. It did not explain the pain in my throat. It did not explain the memory of the cottage, the woman, the hair wrapping around my neck. I walked to the car and tried the door. It opened. I sat inside, hands shaking, and turned the key. The engine started immediately. The dashboard lights came on. The phone charger worked. Everything was normal. I checked my phone. The battery was almost dead, but there was signal now. Several missed calls from my office. A few messages from home asking where I was. According to the time, it was just after 8 a.m. I sat there for a few minutes, trying to breathe. Then I looked toward the forest. The place where I had seen the yellow light was only trees and bushes. There was no path, no clearing, no white cottage, no gate, nothing. The forest was thick and untouched, as if no house had ever stood there. I wanted to get out and check, but I could not make myself move. My body knew something my mind was still trying to deny. There had been something in those trees. Something had called me in. Something had touched me. I started the car properly and pulled back onto the road. For the first few minutes, I drove slowly, watching the mirrors, expecting to see the woman standing behind me in the road. But there was nothing. Just sunlight, trees, and an empty road. I almost convinced myself it had been a nightmare. Almost. Then I looked into the rearview mirror. At first, I thought there was a shadow on my shirt. Then I saw it clearly. Draped over my left shoulder was a long strand of wet black hair. It was not mine. It clung to my shirt like it had been placed there gently. Water dripped from the end of it, even though everything else in the car was dry. I grabbed it with 2 shaking fingers and pulled it away. The moment I touched it, the smell of jasmine filled the car. My throat tightened again. I threw the hair out the window and drove faster than I have ever driven in my life. That happened last month. Since then, I have tried to forget it, but I cannot. Sometimes, when I wake up at night, I smell wet earth and flowers in my room. Sometimes, after I shower, I find long black strands stuck to the bathroom tiles. Once, I found one wrapped around my wrist when I woke up, tight enough to leave a red mark. I still do not know what she did to me while I was unconscious. And the worst part is this. Some nights, when the rain starts falling and the wind pushes against my windows, I hear a woman's voice outside my door. Soft, calm, patient, asking me to come back. Story 4. The day I decided to visit the wishing well was the same day Soul finally found the courage to laugh in my face about how desperate I had become. "Look, I love you," she said, trying to sound gentle at first, "but you just don't learn." She paused after saying it, because even she seemed to realize her words had come out heavier than she meant them to. But then her eyes dropped to the $10 bill in my hand, the one with Alexander Hamilton's face on it, and she started laughing again. "Becky, with that $10, you could buy yourself 2 decent burgers," she said. "You're too much. Seriously, you need to learn how to be single." She adjusted her vintage blazer, one of those rare pieces from an old brand that had stopped existing years ago. The cemetery sun was beating down on us, and I could feel sweat gathering under my collar. Of course, the wishing well was in a cemetery. That was the kind of detail that should have made me turn around and leave. A normal wishing well would have been strange enough, but a wishing well surrounded by graves felt like the beginning of every horror movie I had ever watched. Still, I stood there with the bill in my hand, trying to look brave while my stomach twisted. I cared about Soul more than almost anyone. She was the only person who really understood me, even when she was being cruel in that honest way only close friends can be. So I tried to take her comments as a joke instead of an insult. I tried not to feel embarrassed. I tried not to think about how pathetic I probably looked, standing over a cemetery well and preparing to throw money into it because I wanted love. The truth was, I was scared, not just of the well, but of what it might do. In movies, magical things never come without a price. Maybe the well would twist my wish into something terrible. Maybe I would get exactly what I asked for, but it would come with a curse. Maybe I would have to give up half my soul. Maybe it would grant my wish now and come back years later to claim my firstborn child as payment. There were too many awful possibilities. And yet, I still wanted to do it. Because I could not take it anymore. I could not survive another first date. I could not sit across from another man while he gave me the same 3 boring stories about his life. For some reason, they all played instruments. I had dated 2 pianists, 1 bassist, 1 ukulele player, and 2 guitarists. Every single one of them had been convinced he was destined for greatness, even though none of them seemed to have any real plan. The worst part was that I always believed them at first. During the first few weeks, when everything felt warm and bright, I believed every dream they told me. I believed in their music. I believed in their art. I believed in the version of themselves they were trying to become. Maybe because I wanted someone to believe in me the same way. But none of them ever saw me. Not the real me. They liked the version I made for them. The careful version. The sweet version. The version with the right dress, the right makeup, the right laugh, the right opinions. I knew how to become whatever someone wanted for a while. I had done it so many times that sometimes I forgot where the act ended. The problem was that the longer I stayed with someone, the more the disguise started to stick to my skin. It became painful. Every compliment felt wrong because it was never for me. It was for the mask. Then, slowly, the mask would begin to crack. A piece of the dress would slip. My makeup would smudge. My real thoughts would come out before I could stop them. My neediness, my anger, my fear, my strange little habits, my ugly parts. And once they saw what was underneath, they always pulled away. By the time my tears had washed the whole mask off, the relationship was already over. So when Soul told me she had heard about a magical well while visiting her dead aunt's grave, it felt like a chance to end the misery that had been sitting inside my life for years. Soul, I asked, looking down into the dark water, what did you say I have to tell the well? She was trying very hard not to laugh again. Nothing, Becky, she said. You just think really hard about what you want. That's it. The well makes it happen in a way that feels natural. I nodded like this was perfectly reasonable. Then I squeezed my eyes shut, pictured what I wanted, and dropped the bill. Except, it did not fall into the well. A breeze caught it, lifted it sideways, and blew it onto the ground. Soul burst out laughing. I picked up the bill and checked to see if it had ripped. It was still in perfect condition, except now there was a crude, hand-drawn smiley face over Hamilton's serious expression. The smiley face was winking at me. I stared at it. Soul laughed harder. I did not know whether to feel scared or insulted. It was not a grand magical moment. It was not lightning. It was not a deep voice coming from the water. It was just a ruined $10 bill with a stupid face on it. Since the wind had already ruined the drama, I had to shove my hand into the cold well water and push the bill down myself. My sleeve soaked through, but I held the bill under until it finally sank. Then I waited. Nothing happened. The cemetery stayed quiet. No clouds covered the sun. No handsome stranger stepped out from behind a tree. No glowing portal opened. No magical horse spread its wings. The water did not even ripple in a special way. Soul leaned against the stone edge of the well. Well, look on the bright side. You can always fish your bill back out and at least buy a soda. Don't mess around, I snapped. If I take the bill back, the spell will break. Even as I said it, I could hear the disappointment in my own voice. I hated that. He'll show up later, I said. I'm going to meet him. You'll see. Soul stared at me like she was trying to decide whether to laugh again or stage an intervention. I cannot believe that if you had the chance to ask for anything in the world, you chose to wish for a boyfriend, she said as we started walking toward the cemetery exit. Becky, we seriously need to fix your priorities. After that, Soul did not bring up the well again. She probably forgot about it as soon as it stopped being my weird stunt of the week. I stopped talking about it too. Her last words stuck with me more than I wanted to admit. Was that really how people saw me? Desperate? Empty? So hungry for love that I would waste money in a cemetery well and pretend it was romantic? Eventually, I managed to bury the memory. Weeks passed. I almost forgot the whole thing. Then, one afternoon, I was at the campus kiosk trying to buy a drink. The cashier told me they did not have change for my 20. They needed exactly $10 in smaller bills to complete the sale. I immediately thought of the $10 bill I had wasted in the well. I was standing there, irritated and embarrassed, when the guy behind me in line spoke up. I can help, he said. I'm getting a large double-scoop Italian ice. It's exactly 10. I turned to look at him. He was beautiful, not just cute. Beautiful in a way that made me forget how to act normal for a second. He had dark eyes, messy hair, and the kind of smile that looked like it knew more than it was saying. He smiled at me. I smiled back before I could stop myself. Then he opened his wallet and handed the cashier a $10 bill. There, drawn over Alexander Hamilton's face, was the winking smiley. My breath caught. "Where did you get that bill?" I asked. The words came out too fast, too loud, too strange. He blinked, then laughed softly. Funny story, actually. I work part-time at a cemetery, and people are always leaving money in this one fountain because they think it's magical. My face went hot. "Oh," I said. "Right. I see." The magic drained out of the moment so quickly that I almost felt dizzy. Of course, that made more sense. The well had not granted my wish. Some guy who cleaned the cemetery had pulled my money out of the water and spent it on Italian ice. I moved aside so he could leave, but he did not go far. He walked to a nearby campus table and sat down. He put in one earbud and started eating his frozen blue dessert. I should have walked away. Instead, I walked over and sat at the same table. He slipped one earbud out and gave me a sly smile. "You're the one who put that bill in the fountain, aren't you?" "I mean, yes," I said quickly, but not seriously. It was basically a joke. I was trying to prove someone wrong. He looked like he was humoring me, and he was not even hiding it very well. "Fair enough," he said. "What were you wishing for?" I swallowed. "Nothing interesting." I lied. "Money. Lots of money." "Everyone asks for that," he said. He scraped the edges of his Italian ice with the plastic spoon, mixing the bright blue syrup back into the ice. "I don't know," he continued. "You seemed more interesting than that. I thought you would have wished for something unique." "Well, money makes the most sense," I said, even though I did not believe it. "It would solve most people's problems. Not everything can be bought with money." His eyes met mine. "I'm Chase," he said. "It's a pleasure to meet you. What's your name?" "You still haven't told me." He changed the direction of the conversation so smoothly that I almost missed it. But I knew what he was doing. He was flirting with me. "Becky," I said. Then, before I could talk myself out of it, I tore a small piece of paper from my notebook and wrote down my number. He took it with a smile. "Great, Becky, I'll text you. Keep an eye out." Then he stood and walked toward the engineering building. I watched him go. Since I was majoring in sociology, our paths probably never would have crossed, if not for that moment. Was Chase what I had been asking the universe for? Had the wish worked after all? Had I finally done it? Had I met the love of my life? It was too early to know. But it was not too early for the feeling to take root. Still, I called Soul immediately. "So," Soul said after I finished explaining, "what I'm hearing is that you fell in love with the guy who cleans coins and trash out of cemetery decorations. You and I both know it's not like that," I said. I was in an Uber on the way home. The driver was not paying attention, but I still turned my face toward the window like I needed privacy. "There's something about him," I continued. "I can't explain it. A job, a possible career path, charm, and $10, Soul said. "That's what there is." She sighed, but I could hear the smile in her voice. She knew me too well. She knew my sudden romantic disasters better than anyone. "Do you know what instrument he plays yet?" she asked. Right then, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number lit up my screen. "Becky, I know we just met, and this might be weird, but do you want to see how my violin cover of Come On Eileen turned out?" I stared at the message. According to the text I just got, I said slowly, "The violin." Soul laughed so hard she had to hang up. Chase sent the video. I played the first 30 seconds. It was exactly the kind of overplayed song I expected, but on violin, which somehow made it both better and worse. I paused it, checked the time, and decided to wait exactly 4.5 minutes before replying. That way, it would seem like I had watched the whole thing and been impressed. When enough time passed, I texted back. "That was amazing. Where did you learn to play?" Great song choice, too. The words were not fully honest, but they were easy. They slid into place like makeup on clean skin. A new disguise. This one felt fresh and light. It felt cool against me, helped by the cold air blowing from the Uber's vents. It did not feel heavy yet. Over the next few weeks, my conversations with Chase deepened, and despite everything I had told myself, I really did begin to like him. He was interesting, more interesting than most people I had dated. He had endless stories. He had a small dark mole on his nose, slightly crooked teeth, and a talent for whispering the funniest jokes right when a movie theater went completely silent. It felt strange to admit, but I loved his teeth. Not because they were crooked, exactly. It was because they were sharp, not vampire sharp, not movie monster sharp, just sharper than normal, noticeably sharp, unusually sharp. Sometimes, when he played violin and became deeply focused, he would bite his lower lip, and I would catch myself staring. I did not know whether my mask was melting or becoming my real face. With Chase, I did not have to pretend as much as usual. I did not have to fake being impressed by him. He was talented, yes, but more than that, he had direction. Most people our age drifted through life pretending to have plans. Chase actually had them. He knew where he wanted to live. He knew what kind of job he wanted. He knew how much money he needed to save each month. He kept a detailed planner and wrote everything down with beautiful pens from a collection he carried like treasure. His handwriting was neat, his clothes were neat, his room was neat, even his hands were perfect. His nails were carefully shaped and shining, almost too clean, though maybe a little longer than most men kept them. By the 5th week, I realized I was not acting anymore. I was showing him the real parts of me. The messy parts. The insecure parts. The anxious, embarrassing parts I usually tried to hide, and somehow, he was kind to them. He treated my real face with the same tenderness other men had only given to my mask. For a while, I thought that meant I was finally safe. But then I started noticing something. The warmth in his smile only existed when he looked at me. Around other people, it vanished. When Chase spoke to a cashier, his face was pleasant but empty. When he talked to his classmates, his laugh sounded correct but hollow. When Sol met him for the first time, she later told me he seemed nice, but too smooth. I laughed it off, but I knew what she meant. One afternoon, while we were sitting outside a coffee shop, he laughed at a joke I made. It was not a very good joke. I knew it was not. "You know you don't have to fake laugh," I said. The words came out sharper than I meant. He stopped smiling. My stomach tightened. "I'm not that funny," I continued. "You can just say it." Chase looked thoughtful for a moment. Too thoughtful, like he was deciding on the best answer. Panic fluttered inside my chest. Then he smiled again. "I'm not faking anything," he said smoothly. "I genuinely find you funny." His voice was perfect. Too perfect. There was something under it. Something I could feel but not name. That was when I started to suspect that Chase was wearing a disguise too. Maybe that should have comforted me. Maybe it should have made me feel less alone. After all, I had spent my whole life wearing masks. But this was different. My disguise was made of fear. His felt like a trap. I told Sol about it, and she said I was overthinking things. She said I always looked for cracks once someone got too close. She said I was trying to destroy it before it could destroy me. Maybe she was right. But I knew what I felt. I needed to know who Chase really was. I needed to find a way to pull his mask off. The chance came while we were in his bedroom, rewatching an old episode of House. The room was dim, except for the blue light from the screen. Chase was lying beside me, one arm behind his head, his violin case leaning against the wall. His planner sat open on the desk. A black pen lay across the page. He looked relaxed. That was what I needed. I needed to catch him off guard. I reached up and touched his face. Chase turned toward me. His mouth curved into a soft smile. His cheeks lifted. It was warm and loving and exactly what a boyfriend's smile should look like. But his eyes did not change. They stayed empty. Completely empty. For one terrible second, I understood that I had never seen him smile for real. Not once. I had only seen the shape of a smile placed carefully over something else. My fingers rested against his cheek. His skin felt wrong. Not cold, not dead, just wrong in a way my mind could not fully understand. Too smooth in some places, too tight in others. Like something artificial had been stretched over a shape it did not belong to. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Becky?" he asked. His voice was gentle. His eyes were not. I do not know what came over me. Maybe fear. Maybe anger. Maybe every failed relationship, every mask, every false compliment, every version of myself I had created just to be loved. Before I could stop myself, I dug my fingernails deep into the skin of his cheeks. Then I pulled. The skin gave way. It peeled back under my hands like it had never truly been part of him. Chase did not scream. That was the worst part. He only stared at me while I tore the face away. Underneath, he was not a man. His real mouth split wider than any human mouth should. Rows of razor-sharp teeth gleamed in the dim light. His jaw stretched too far down. His fingers bent and lengthened, nails sliding into curved claws. The skin I had pulled loose hung from my hands like a ruined mask. The thing beneath Chase smiled with all of its teeth, and in that moment, I finally understood. The wishing well had worked. It had given me exactly what I asked for. Someone who could see the real me. Something that had been wearing a disguise, too. Story 5. Yes, this is a horror story. Here is the rewritten version in simple English, smooth flow, no headings, no bold names, and kept close to the original story. Living on a large residential university campus can feel peaceful, especially at night. During the day, the whole place is full of noise. Students walk from one department to another, professors rush to their offices, bicycles pass by every few seconds, and the small campus shops stay crowded until evening. But once the night settles in, everything changes. The same roads that feel normal in daylight become long and empty. The same buildings that look ordinary during class hours begin to look too large, too silent, and too far away from help. Most nights, I liked that silence. I had grown used to it. I had lived on campus long enough to know the sound of dry leaves moving across the road, the low hum of distant generators, the occasional bark of a stray dog, and the strange way the wind moved between the academic blocks. It was peaceful, but sometimes it became too peaceful. Sometimes the quiet felt less like calm and more like something holding its breath. This happened during exam season, when the campus always had a different mood. Students stayed up late in their rooms, lights stayed on in the hostels, and professors became more serious than usual. Everyone was worried about question papers, answer sheets, schedules, and last-minute preparation. My uncle was an associate professor in the physics department, and because he lived close to us on campus, he often asked me to help with small things when he was busy. That night, I had spent most of the evening playing badminton. I had promised myself earlier that I would study or at least do something useful, but like always, the day slipped away from me. By the time I returned home, I was tired, sweaty, and feeling a little guilty. I had done nothing productive all day, and the guilt was sitting in the back of my mind like a teacher silently judging me. I had just washed my face and was thinking about going to bed when my uncle called me. His voice sounded rushed. He told me that he had left an exam question paper in his office at the department and needed it urgently. He had to make copies by morning, and because it was already very late, He asked if I could go to his office, pick it up, and bring it back. At first, I did not want to go. The physics department was not exactly close to our house. It was on the other side of campus, and walking there at that hour sounded like punishment. My legs were already heavy from badminton, and my body wanted nothing more than sleep. But I also felt guilty for wasting the whole day, and helping my uncle felt like a small way to make myself useful. So I agreed. I told him I would go and get it. He explained where the paper was supposed to be, somewhere on his office table under a pile of answer sheets. He said the office key was in the usual place, and then he thanked me quickly before ending the call. I looked at my phone and saw that the battery was low. Since I thought I would only be gone for a short while, I plugged it in to charge. That was my first mistake. I did not take it with me. No phone, no flashlight, no way to call anyone if something went wrong. At the time, it did not feel like a big deal. I knew the campus. I had walked those roads many times. What could happen inside a university? Before leaving, I switched off the light and fan in my room. The house became quiet behind me. I stepped outside, locked the door, and started walking toward the physics department. The night air was colder than I expected. It was the kind of cold that comes suddenly, even after a warm day, and makes the back of your neck tighten. A chilly wind moved across the road, carrying the smell of dust, old trees, and damp concrete. The campus looked empty. The streetlights were on, but some of them flickered, and the spaces between them were darker than usual. My footsteps sounded too loud on the road. Every now and then I looked behind me for no reason. There was nothing there, of course, but the feeling stayed with me. The kind of feeling you get when you know you are alone but still feel like someone is aware of you. To reach the physics department, I had to pass the mathematics department. It was one of the older buildings on campus, with long corridors and high windows. During the day, it was always full of students. At night, it was usually locked and dark. But that night, as I came closer, I noticed something strange. Some of the lights were on. Not just one light in an office, which would have made sense. The lights inside a few lecture rooms were on, and I could hear fans running. Through the windows, I could see the blades turning slowly above empty benches. The sound was soft, but clear in the silence. I stopped walking and stared at the building. It felt wrong. By that time of night, the department should have been closed. No one had late classes there. No one should have left fans running in empty rooms. For a moment, I thought maybe some staff member had forgotten to switch them off. It was odd, but not impossible. Maybe students had used the rooms for exam preparation earlier. Maybe the security guard had missed it. I did not want to waste time, but the sound of those fans bothered me. So I went inside the mathematics department through the side entrance, which was not fully locked. The corridor was dim. My slippers made a faint, dragging sound on the floor as I walked to the lecture rooms. I switched off the fans in the rooms I could reach, but I left the lights on. I do not know why. Maybe because the lights made the place feel less dead. Maybe because I did not want to stand in complete darkness. The moment the fans slowed down, the silence grew heavier. I left quickly and continued toward the physics department. By the time I reached it, it must have been around 2 a.m. I remember thinking of the time clearly. 2 a.m. That was the hour when even the most restless students were usually asleep, when the campus dogs stopped barking, and when every building seemed to belong to something other than people. The physics department was colder than the rest of the campus. The building stood in almost complete darkness. The main corridor looked like a black tunnel. I knew where the light switches were in the daytime, but in that darkness, I could not make myself search for them. I had no phone, no torch, nothing. The thought of walking with my hands along the wall, feeling for a switch, made my stomach twist. So I hurried inside, and went straight upstairs. The stairs were made of old stone, and each step gave back a small echo. I tried to walk fast, but the darkness around me made every movement feel slow. When I reached the upper floor, I found my uncle's office, unlocked it with the key, and quickly stepped inside. The moment I turned on the office light, I felt a little better. The room looked exactly as it always did. A large wooden desk, 2 chairs, shelves packed with books, old files, and stacks of answer sheets everywhere. My uncle was not the neatest person when exam season came around. His office always looked like a storm had passed through it. Papers covered the table, some tied in bundles, some loose, some half falling to the floor. I locked the office door behind me, though I did not think much of it at first. Then I started searching for the question paper. I lifted answer sheets, checked folders, moved books, and tried not to mix up anything important. The room smelled of old paper, dust, and the faint ink smell that always hangs around exam work. After a few minutes, I found it. The question paper was under a thick pile of unchecked answer sheets, just where my uncle had said it would be. I picked it up and folded it carefully. I was about to leave when I heard a sound outside the office door. It was small at first, a scrape, maybe, or a soft step. I froze. My first thought was that it had to be a cat. There were always cats around campus. They slipped in and out of buildings whenever doors were left open. I told myself one had probably wandered into the corridor. That thought helped for a moment. A cat was normal. A cat was nothing to be afraid of. Then I heard murmuring. It was low at first, like voices far away. Then it grew slowly, second by second, until I was sure it was coming from the corridor outside. Not one voice. Many voices. People talking quietly, as if a group had gathered outside the office. My heart started beating so hard that I felt sick. I stood there, holding the question paper, staring at the door. My mouth went dry. I moved as silently as I could and locked the door from the inside. Then I leaned closer and listened. There were people outside. I was not imagining it. I could not understand what they were saying. The words were too soft and blurred together, but there was a rhythm to the voices. A pause, then a reply. A few voices at once. It sounded like students talking between classes. It sounded normal in a way that made it even more frightening, because there should not have been anyone there at 2 a.m. I waited. The murmuring continued for a while, then stopped all at once. The silence that followed was complete. I stood inside the office for a few more minutes, afraid to move. Then curiosity started pushing through the fear. I told myself maybe there had been some late-night exam meeting. Maybe some research students were working. Maybe I had scared myself for no reason. Slowly, I unlocked the office door. I opened it just enough to peek out. What I saw in the corridor made my whole body go cold. The physics department was full of people, not crowded like daytime, but alive. There were students standing in the passage. There were people walking from one room to another. In the lecture rooms, classes were going on. I could see professors at the front facing rows of students. The lights were dim, not fully bright, but bright enough for me to see movement, faces, and shadows. It was after 2 a.m, yet the department looked like a strange, silent version of a normal school day. I had been to the physics department countless times. I knew many of the students by face. I knew some professors. I knew the staff. But I did not recognize a single person there. Not one. Their clothes looked ordinary, but not quite modern. Their faces looked pale in the weak light. Nobody laughed. Nobody moved naturally. Everything felt controlled, like they were acting out a scene they had repeated many times. At first, I was terrified. Then, strangely, I became curious. My fear did not disappear, but it changed shape. I wanted to understand what I was looking at. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself forward. A small group was standing in the passage, talking quietly. I limped toward them, though I do not know why I was moving like that. Maybe my knees were shaking too badly to walk normally. As I got closer, all of them turned and looked at me at the same time. Not one after another, at the same time. Their faces did not show surprise. They did not speak. They simply looked at me. Then they took a step back. Then another. Then another. The air around them felt colder than the rest of the hallway. The wind seemed to come from that side of the passage, though there were no open windows nearby. I stopped. They kept looking at me. I did not know what to say. I did not know if they were students, actors, strangers, or something else. For some reason, I was no longer as scared as I should have been. Maybe I was too tired. Maybe my mind refused to accept what I was seeing. So I turned away from them and entered one of the lecture rooms. Inside, the room was full. Students sat at desks facing the front. A professor stood near the board. But nothing was written on the board. No formulas, no notes, nothing. Everyone was just sitting there as if they had been waiting. The moment I entered, every face turned toward me. Again, they moved together, almost perfectly. No one spoke. No one asked who I was. No one told me to leave. The professor looked at me with the same empty expression as the students. Then, one by one, they stood up and began leaving the room. They ignored me completely. That annoyed me more than it scared me. I know that sounds stupid, but fear does strange things to you. I had walked all the way there in the cold, with no phone, no light, and no sleep. I had seen something impossible, and now these people were acting like I was the strange one. As one of them passed near me, I reached out and gently grabbed his hand. The cold hit me instantly. It was not like touching cold skin. It was like grabbing a piece of ice that had been left in a grave. The cold shot through my fingers, up my arm, and into my chest. I gasped and let go. But the strangest part was that he did not stop. For a second, I thought I was holding him. I knew I had felt his hand. I knew I had touched something. But when I looked again, he was already a few inches away from me, still walking, as if my hand had passed through him, or as if he had slipped away without moving. He turned his head slightly to the side and gave me a look I will never forget. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was warning. Then he walked out with the others. I stood alone in the lecture room, breathing hard. My fingers still hurt from the cold. My mind tried to explain it. Maybe this was some old university culture I did not know about. Maybe some departments held strange late-night study sessions during exam season. Maybe these were visiting students or researchers. Maybe I was just exhausted from badminton and lack of sleep. Even while I thought those things, I knew none of them made sense. I left the room and went downstairs. The lower floor was quiet. My footsteps sounded too loud again. That was when I realized I had made another mistake. I had left the question paper in my uncle's office. In all the fear and confusion, I must have put it down before opening the door. I cursed under my breath and rushed back upstairs, expecting to see the same people, the same classes, the same pale faces in the dim light. But when I reached the upper floor, the entire place was empty. The corridor was deserted. The lecture rooms were dark and silent. There were no students, no professors, no murmuring, no footsteps, no one leaving by the stairs, no sound of doors closing, nothing. I stood there, staring down the passage. I had not seen anyone come downstairs. There was no other way for that many people to leave so quickly, yet they were gone. I did not want to understand anymore. I ran to my uncle's office, grabbed the question paper, switched off the light, locked the door, and left the physics department as fast as I could. The walk home felt longer than before. I kept the question paper pressed against my chest with both hands. The wind was sharper now. Every tree looked like a person standing still. Every shadow seemed to move when I was not looking directly at it. As I came near the mathematics department again, I saw light through one of the lecture room windows. Someone was inside. At first, I thought it might be a guard. Then I noticed the movement. A person was standing near the switchboard, turning the lights and fans on and off. On, off, on, off. The fan blades started spinning, slowed down, then started again. I stopped walking. The figure stood with its back partly turned to me. I do not know why I went closer. I should have kept walking. I should have gone straight home and told my uncle to collect his own question papers for the rest of his life. But I was tired, confused, and still trying to force the night into something normal. I stepped into the lecture room. "What are you doing?" I asked. The person stopped touching the switches. For a moment, there was only the sound of the fan turning slowly above us. Then he turned his head. It was the same guy from the physics lecture room, the one whose hand I had grabbed, the one who had looked at me before walking away. His face was pale in the dim light. His eyes were fixed on me. In a quiet voice he said, "You shouldn't have grabbed my hand." I could not move. My face went cold. My body felt empty, like all the blood had drained out of me at once. I stood there in the doorway, staring at him, while he calmly walked past me and stepped out of the room. I wanted to run, scream, follow him, ask him what he was, ask him why he was there, ask him what would happen now. But I did nothing. I just stood there for what felt like years, listening to his footsteps fade into the dark corridor, while the lights above me flickered and the fan slowly turned on its own. Story 6. I know this sounds foolish. I know, because I used to read stories like this online and think the same things everyone else thinks. Why would anyone open the door again? Why wouldn't they call the police sooner? Why didn't they just leave? It all seems so simple when you were safe, warm, and reading from the other side of a screen. But you do not understand how weak those ideas become until it is midnight, and you are standing barefoot in your own hallway with a kitchen knife in one shaking hand and your phone in the other. You do not understand until someone is breathing on the other side of your front door, close enough that you can hear it through the wood, and your mind keeps trying to turn the whole thing into something normal, because the real answer is too frightening to accept. It started with Thai food. I had moved into my new apartment 3 weeks earlier. There was nothing strange about the place. It was not an old haunted building. There was no creepy landlord, no warning from the previous tenant, no strange sounds coming from the walls. It was just a normal second-floor apartment above a row of shops. The hallway always smelled faintly of carpet cleaner, old rain, and whatever someone else had cooked for dinner. During the day, I could hear traffic outside and people walking past the shops below. At night, the place became quiet in a way I was still getting used to. I had moved there after my breakup with Lewis. We had been together for 4 years, and by the end of it, I was more tired than heartbroken. He was not violent, he was not evil, he was not the kind of person people warn you about. He was just useless in a slow, quiet, exhausting way. He made everything harder without meaning to. Being with him felt less like having a partner and more like looking after a grown man who never learned how to look after himself. When he finally left, I cried for a week, because that is what you are supposed to do after 4 years. Then, little by little, I felt something else. Relief. For the first time in years, my home belonged to me. My mugs were in the cupboard. My clothes were in the wardrobe. My music played without anyone sighing or asking if we could put on something else. If I left dishes in the sink, they were my dishes. If I wanted silence, I could have silence. If I wanted to eat dinner on the sofa in my pajamas, nobody was there to make a joke about it. That night, I came home late from work. It had rained all day, the kind of steady cold rain that gets into your shoes and stays there. By the time I climbed the stairs to my flat, my socks were damp and my shoulders ached. I had no energy to cook. I did not even want to stand in the kitchen long enough to make toast. So I ordered food from the Thai place down the road. Green curry, jasmine rice, spring rolls, and a Diet Coke. The app said it would take 25 minutes. I changed into pajamas, washed my face, and curled up on the sofa with my phone. I remember feeling calm. That is the detail I hate now. How normal everything felt. How close I was to having a boring, ordinary night. I was tired, hungry, and slightly cold, but I was safe. At least, I thought I was. At 10:43, my buzzer rang. I pressed the intercom button. Hello? A man's voice answered, soft and slightly muffled through the speaker. Delivery? He sounded young, maybe in his 20s or early 30s. It was hard to tell. There was rain in the background, or maybe traffic. Second floor, I said, flat 6. I know, he said. I frowned, but only for a second. Of course he knew. The app gives drivers the flat number. It was not strange. It only sounded strange because of the way he said it. Not like he had just checked the order, but like he had known before I told him. Still, I buzzed him in. I waited by the door, listening to the building settle around me. A minute later, there was a knock. When I opened the door, he was standing too close. That was the first thing I noticed. Most delivery drivers knock and then step back a little. They give you space. This man was right in front of the doorway, almost filling it. He wore a black raincoat with the hood pulled up, and a thermal delivery bag hung from one shoulder. I could not see much of his face, just his mouth, his chin, and a patch of dark stubble. Rainwater dotted the front of his coat. Aaron? He asked. That's me. He held out the bag. Enjoy your food. Thanks. I took it from him and was already starting to close the door when he said, Sorry, I forgot your drink. I looked down into the bag. Curry, rice, spring rolls, no Diet Coke. It's fine, I said. Don't worry about it. I've got it downstairs. Honestly, it's okay. I'll bring it up. Before I could answer, he turned and walked back toward the stairs. I closed the door and locked it. I do not know why I locked it so quickly. Maybe it was because he had stood too close. Maybe it was because of the way he had said my name. Maybe it was simply because I lived alone now, and living alone changes the way every small thing feels. A sound that would have meant nothing before suddenly becomes something you notice. A shadow under the door becomes something you watch. A stranger in the hallway is not just a stranger anymore. He is someone who knows which door is yours. I carried the food to the coffee table and told myself I was being silly. The curry was still hot, the rice was steaming, and the spring rolls smelled amazing. I sat down, opened the containers, and tried to let the normal smell of takeaway push the strange feeling out of my mind. Then I found the receipt. It was folded under the spring rolls, not the restaurant receipt. That one was stapled to the outside of the bag, printed properly with my order and the total. This was different. It was a plain white slip of paper, torn badly along one side, as if someone had ripped it from a notebook. At first, I thought it was a kitchen note that had fallen into the bag by mistake. Then, I saw my name. Aaron M. Flat 6. Lives alone. No dog. Chain lock only. Bedroom window faces service alley. Usually home after 7. I stared at it for so long that the words stopped looking real. My first thought was Lewis. It had to be him. It was the only answer my brain could reach for. Some stupid attempt to scare me. Some pathetic little joke meant to make me call him, to remind me that being alone was dangerous, to make me feel like I still needed someone. It was exactly the kind of thing he might think was clever after a few drinks, then deny later if I got angry. I picked up my phone and called him. He answered on the 5th ring. What? Did you send me something? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. Did you send someone to my flat? There was a pause, then a tired sigh. Aaron, it's nearly 11. I got a note in my takeaway. What note? One that says I live alone. The next pause was different. Longer, quieter. Are you serious? He asked. Yes, where are you? In my flat, obviously. Lock your door. It is locked. No, he said, and now he sounded more awake. Properly lock it. Even then, part of me was annoyed. He had no right to suddenly act like the sensible one, like he was in charge of fixing something. I have locked it, I said. Send me a picture. I almost told him to leave me alone, but my hands were shaking, and a small part of me wanted someone else to see the note. I took a photo and sent it to him. He called back 10 seconds later. That wasn't me. Lewis, I swear to you, Aaron, that wasn't me. Call the police. Before I could answer, someone knocked on my door. 3 soft knocks. Not loud, not angry, not rushed, just polite. I stood in the middle of my living room with the phone pressed to my ear. Aaron? Lewis said. There was another knock. Then the delivery driver's voice came from the hallway. Forgot your drink. I did not move. Lewis kept saying my name, but his voice seemed far away, like he was calling from another room. The driver knocked again. I can leave it here if you want. I walked slowly toward the door. Every step felt wrong. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. No delivery driver, no drink, no shadow moving near the stairs. Nothing. I stepped back. My phone buzzed in my hand. A notification from the delivery app appeared on the screen. Your driver is at your door. I looked through the peephole again. Still empty. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I do not know why I answered. I think my mind was still trying to make sense of everything. Still trying to force the night back into a normal shape. Maybe it was the restaurant. Maybe it was the real driver. Maybe there was a simple explanation. Hello? The delivery driver's voice said, "You shouldn't have looked at the receipt." My throat closed. "You were meant to eat first," he said. I dropped the phone. It hit the floor, but the call stayed connected. His breathing came through the speaker, slow and close. Then the door handle moved. Down, up, he did it carefully, almost gently, testing the lock without making much noise. I stared at the handle like I was hypnotized. The chain was on. The main lock was turned. But suddenly those little bits of metal seemed thin and weak and useless. I grabbed the phone from the floor and ended the call. My fingers were shaking so badly that it took 3 tries. Then I called emergency services. The operator asked what service I needed. "Police," I whispered. "What's happening?" "There's someone outside my flat. Are you in immediate danger?" "Yes, I think so." "Is your door locked?" "Yes, can you see the person?" I looked through the peephole again. The hallway was empty. "No," I said. but he's there. As soon as I said it, the letterbox lifted, just a little. A narrow black gap opened near my knees. I stumbled back so fast I nearly fell. The operator asked what had happened. He opened the letterbox. "Do not go near the door," she said. "Move to a room with a lock if you can." My bathroom had a lock. It was cheap and flimsy, the kind of lock meant to stop a guest from walking in by accident, but it was better than standing in the hallway. I ran to the kitchen, pulled the biggest knife from the drawer, and backed toward the bathroom. The letterbox clicked shut behind me. Then the knocking started again. 3 knocks. A pause. 3 knocks. A pause. "Aaron," he called. I shut myself in the bathroom and turned the little silver lock. Then I sat on the edge of the bath with the knife on my lap and the phone pressed against my ear. The operator kept speaking to me in a calm voice. She asked questions I could hardly answer. My name, my address, whether I had seen a weapon, whether anyone else was inside the flat, whether there was another way in. "No," I whispered, "just the front door." Then I remembered the note. "Bedroom window faces service alley." My bedroom window. The window I had opened earlier because the flat smelled like fresh paint and damp clothes. I stood up so quickly the knife slipped from my lap and clattered into the bath. "What is it?" the operator asked. "My bedroom window." "Is someone trying to get in?" "I don't know. If the bathroom door locks, stay where you are." That was the problem. From the bathroom, I could not see the bedroom. I could not see the hallway. I could not see anything except the sink, the bath, and the cracked line of light under the door. The flat went quiet. That was worse than the knocking. For a few seconds, the only sounds were the operator breathing through the phone and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then my bedroom door creaked. I had left it open. I knew I had left it open, but the sound was clear. Slow. Careful. The sound of someone touching the door with their fingertips and pushing it wider. "He's inside," I whispered. The operator told me the police were close. Close did not mean inside my flat. Close did not mean between me and him. A floorboard moved in the hallway. Then another. He was walking toward the bathroom. I picked the knife back up and stood behind the door. My legs felt weak, and my hands were wet with sweat. I remember thinking I was going to die in pajamas. It was a stupid thought, but fear does strange things to your mind. I was going to die barefoot, in old pajamas, with Thai food getting cold on the coffee table. The bathroom handle dipped. Once, twice, then his voice came through the door. "You should have taken the drink." I covered my mouth with one hand to keep from making a sound. He laughed softly. "I'm not angry," he said. "You just made it messy." The door shifted in the frame as he leaned his weight against it. The bathroom lock was tiny. It was never made to keep out someone who really wanted to come in. He pressed again, harder this time. Wood cracked near the latch. The operator was saying something, but I could not understand her anymore. Then there was a loud bang from downstairs. A voice shouted, "Police." The pressure left the bathroom door. For 1 second, I thought he had run. Then the door burst open. He came through with his hood still up and a screwdriver in his right hand. I swung the knife without thinking. It caught his arm. He shouted and slammed into me, knocking me back into the sink hard enough to crack the mirror above it. The knife fell from my hand. He grabbed my wrist and squeezed so hard my fingers went numb. "Stupid," he said. That was all he managed to say. 2 officers came down the hallway shouting. One hit him from the side, and both of them crashed into the bath. Another officer pulled me into the hallway and kept saying, "You're safe. You're safe. You're safe." but I did not feel safe. I do not think I have felt safe since. They arrested him in my bathroom. His name was Daniel Price. At least, that was the name he gave the police. He was not the delivery driver assigned to my order. The real driver was a woman named Melissa. They found her in her car 3 streets away, unconscious but alive. Someone had hit her from behind after she collected my food. Daniel had taken her phone, her delivery bag, and her jacket. That would have been enough to ruin my life by itself. Then they searched his car. They found printed receipts. Dozens of them, maybe more. Names, addresses, notes. Some were crossed out. Some had ticks beside them. Mine had a circle around it. The police would not tell me much. They kept using careful words like ongoing investigation, possible link, recovered items, and active inquiry. They talked around the truth without saying it. But one officer slipped. He said the others were lucky too. Then he stopped talking. Others, that word has lived in my head ever since. I stayed at Lewis's place that night, which should tell you how terrified I was. I sat on his sofa until morning, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like his laundry detergent, watching rain crawl down the window. He made tea and kept apologizing for things that had nothing to do with him. For once, I did not argue. I was too tired, too empty, too afraid of every small sound outside the door. By midday, I had almost convinced myself it was over. Daniel had been arrested. Melissa was alive. The police had the receipts. My locks would be changed. I could move again if I had to. It was horrible, but it had happened, and now it was finished. Then my phone buzzed. A notification from the delivery app appeared on the screen. I stared at it, confused, because I had deleted the app at the police station. I remembered doing it. I remembered pressing my finger on the screen, watching the little icon shake, then disappear. But there it was. Your driver is nearby. I opened the notification. The map showed a small bike icon moving down Lewis's street. I stood up so fast I spilled tea over my leg. Lewis looked at me. What's wrong? The bike icon stopped outside his house. Then the doorbell rang. Lewis went pale. No, I said. Don't. He walked to the front window and looked through the curtain. There's no one there, he said. My phone buzzed again. Your driver is at your door. Then another message appeared. Forgot your drink. That was 3 days ago. I am writing this from a hotel room under a name that is not mine. The police have my phone now. They told me there was no active order, no driver, no record of any notification being sent. They said the app was not installed when they checked it. They said there was no delivery account activity after that night, but I saw it. Lewis saw the doorbell camera footage too. The porch was empty. No person, no bike, no delivery bag, just 3 knocks recorded by the audio. 3 soft knocks, a pause. 3 soft knocks, a pause. I do not know if Daniel had someone helping him. I do not know if he set something up before they arrested him. I do not know why the app keeps coming back on every phone I borrow, or why the notifications seem to know where I am before I tell anyone. All I know is this. If you order food late at night and the driver tells you he forgot your drink, tell him to leave it outside. Do not open the door. Do not check the hallway. Do not trust the peephole. And if your phone says the driver is nearby after you have already deleted the app, leave before he knocks. Because last night at 10:43, someone slipped a receipt under my hotel room door. It had my fake name on it. My room number. No dog. Traveling alone. Bathroom lock weak. And at the bottom, written in pen, were 4 words. You still seem thirsty.